guys, welcome back and happy new year. I honestly can't believe it's 2025. Like, how are we already halfway through the 2020s? I remember when we hit 2020, it was like such a big year for my family. I was going to graduate high school. Me and my brother were going to college at the same time and moving out of our parents' house for the first time. My sister was leaving middle school and going to high school. There were just so many like big life milestones for my family. And of course, then COVID hit. But I just remember thinking like, wow, we are entering a new like decade where our lives are going to change so much. And I remember thinking like at the start of 2020 and then by the end of the 2020s, like when we hit 2030, my life is going to look so much different. And it's just crazy that time goes by so fast because now we're already halfway to that point. Anyway, I feel like I am kind of a sucker for New Year's and fresh starts, even though it's like kind of arbitrary and you could give yourself a fresh start whenever you want. I feel like everyone kind of giving themselves a fresh start at the same time because of the new year is kind of motivating for me to do the same. So I have several things I want to accomplish in this, I guess I'm calling it like my January reset, kind of getting things together that I feel like I didn't quite have together last year and figuring out like what goals or new habits I want to have. I feel like that's something I've really focused on in more recent years is instead of setting like New Year's resolutions and big goals that I want to hit, I more so have habits that I want to like start implementing and be better at doing regularly. And I'm very excited to hopefully implement some of those habits this year. And there's a few different ways I'm going to try to help myself remember these habits. And that's kind of what we're working on in this video. There are like two big things that I want to set up today that I think are going to help me just like organize my life and make these changes that I want to make. The first is a journal. Now, if you're not new here and you've been around for a little while, you might know that I do journal or have journaled frequently in the past, but unfortunately, I kind of fell off of that when life got crazy. And I feel like everyone does. It's hard to keep up with, especially when life gets crazy. It's unfortunate though, because I feel like the years that I have been really good about keeping up with my journal, I appreciate that version of myself so much because I look back at those journals now and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I documented so many fun memories. And it's just like such a nice keepsake and like time capsule from that moment in my life. But naturally, when life gets really crazy, I kind of fall off of that habit of journaling regularly. So this past year, when we were planning a wedding and moving around a bunch, including moving across the entire country, planning our honeymoon, like all these crazy big life changes, I simply just got busy and didn't document any of them. So unfortunately, my last journal is very behind on my life. It doesn't know that I got a dog. It doesn't know that I got married. It doesn't know that I moved to Oregon, which again, kind of sucks. But obviously those are big life changes that like I'm never going to forget. It's just like it would have been cool if I was documenting them along the way. And this isn't the first time something like this has happened. I always reach points where I get really busy and just like forget to journal for 3 months. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so much has happened. And then I have to like try to catch up, which either takes hours and hours of writing and my hand cramping, or I end up just like typing and like printing it out and sticking it in my book. And I think one of the reasons that this happens is because when I write in my journal, I almost treat it like a scrapbook. Like I have this little photo printer that prints like 2x3s that you can stick in the journal, and then like I'll write what's going on, print photos and put it all in. And while I love doing that and it's therapeutic and also just like really nice for documenting memories, it's definitely very time consuming. And I feel like because of that, journaling has sometimes felt like a chore because it's like, man, I gotta write about this week-long vacation I went on, but there's so many photos I have to go through to pick my favorites, and then there's so many stuff we did, it's gonna take so long to write about. So then it almost just feels like a daunting task instead of a fun one, and obviously that's not what a journal is supposed to be. So all of that rambling is in support of what I'm going to say now. I feel like I want to approach my journal a little bit differently this year, and I want to treat it more like a normal journal. I know most people when they journal, they just pick it up, scribble down their thoughts, and then they're done. Like it's not a big artistic production. But I also don't want to lose that part of documenting my life where I get to like write about fun stuff going on right in the moment and like print photos out and glue them in so I like never forget these moments. So I still have to play around with it, but my thinking is maybe just like treating this journal like a more basic journal, not putting all the pressure to like make it a beautiful scrapbook. Like if one of the pages looks like chicken scratch because I just whipped it out and wrote real quick, that's fine. And then I'm thinking maybe doing like almost like a digital version of the scrapbooking side of things, because as much as I love physical scrapbooking, it just takes so much time. It's expensive because the printer paper for my photo printer that I have is not cheap. And so I just feel like it's more practical to do it digitally. And I've held on to the physical version for so long because I've been considering doing a digital version for years, but there's always a part of me that is like sad to leave the physical side behind and move to digital. But I just think it makes more sense. And it's also like, if I don't move to digital and I force myself to keep doing physical, then I'm just going to keep going through these 6 month gaps where I get busy and I don't journal, and then I end up not documenting anything. So I'd rather have it digital, even if it's a little bit less like cutesy and nostalgic, than not have it at all. So anyway, all that to say, I'm thinking that this journal is going to be like, it's going to help me organize my life in terms of like the typical to-do lists and like routines and habits and stuff, but then it'll also be a place where I can just come and like write, hopefully pretty frequently, about just like how I'm feeling, what's going on in my life, and not so much like a scrapbook. That's what I envision this being. Then we have this really big chalkboard in our kitchen that is completely empty right now, and that's the next thing I want to tackle. We had this chalkboard in our previous apartments, and it was great for like keeping track of chores and watering our plants, although we weren't ever very good at that. Anyway, with that chalkboard, I envision a monthly calendar that I can fill in at the start of each month to, yes, schedule like what's going on in our lives, but also we're pretty good about using Google Calendar for that. It's honestly more so for chores and habits and routines that I have been wanting to implement but haven't, simply because I forget. And I think the chalkboard will be a good physical reminder, right, like smack in the middle of the kitchen where you can't miss it, to help me remember to implement these routines. I hope. I feel like I keep saying routines and it's very broad and vague, and I'm not giving examples. So for example, washing the sheets and towels like every week or every other week, like that's something that I would love to get on like a mathematical schedule. Like I just do it every 2 weeks or whatever the time is, but I just always forget. So I feel like if I had the calendar and I had the chores written out like every other Sunday or every other Monday or whatever day I choose to be my laundry day, I wash the sheets. And I think like having it scheduled on a calendar in my face in the kitchen, I can't possibly forget, right? Same with other chores like wiping down the counters, vacuuming the house. It's all chores that we are pretty good about doing, but we just don't really have them on a schedule. It's kind of just like whenever we remember or think like, oh, we haven't done this in a while, let's do this. And it's stuff that I want to get back on a schedule with. Anyway, I feel like I've rambled on for long enough, but those are kind of the big things I'm going to be doing today to try to get my life to feel a little bit more organized again and a little bit more on track to the routines and habits that I want to implement in my life this year. And then I also have a couple other random little things I want to do, like my laptop. I want to offload a bunch of stuff onto my hard drive because, guys, I had a hard drive and I have no idea where it went. I think I lost it somewhere in the 5-day road trip across the country. I'm still holding on to hope that it's in one of the few boxes we have left that we haven't unpacked yet in the office, but I don't remember ever putting it in a box. Like I had it in a bag during our road trip. So that's why I'm like, there's no way it's in any of those boxes, but I'm also just holding on to hope that it is. It did have footage on it, like a lot of footage, like personal and professional. So that's really unfortunate, but AJ was a dear and he got me a new one for Christmas because I was struggling without it because I couldn't offload stuff. And so I was constantly struggling with storage on my laptop. So he got me a new one for Christmas. So that's another thing I want to do is like finally sort through the stuff that has been clogging up my storage and put it onto the hard drive and kind of free up space on my laptop. I would also love to like kind of reorganize my laptop, maybe make a new desktop background. That's a little bit lower priority right this second because first I need to do my journal and my chalkboard, which I know is going to take a while, and I may or may not be getting a bit of a late start to today's video. It's okay. Roll with the punches. Anyway, I'm going to start journaling and I'm going to try my best not to put too much pressure on myself for it to look beautiful and turn out like all the bullet journals you see on Pinterest. Because again, we are keeping things simpler this year. finished setting up my new journal for the year, so I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of a journal walkthrough. Because like I said, I did things a little bit different this year, kept it simpler, and didn't do all of the like typical bullet journal spreads. So I wanted to show how I'm approaching it this year. Page one, naturally, is a cover page. I kept it very simple. I didn't want to go overboard, and I feel like I just enjoy the minimal journals better. Next, I did the year at a glance page, which I feel like everyone does in their bullet journals. And this is one that I feel like I would always do just because it's really helpful to be able to just flip to real quick when you want to see like what day of the week a certain date is on. So this is always really helpful. Next, I made a collections page, which is definitely just a much more vague and broad table of contents. So I plan to just put whatever page number each month starts at, so that way I can easily flip to a certain month if I want to look back in the future. But then obviously within the month, I'll have to just flip through and find what I'm looking for. Then I made this page, which I feel like turned out really cute, and I honestly wasn't even planning on making this page to begin with, but then I just feel like I had so many thoughts in my head and I needed to get them down on paper so I wouldn't forget like certain habits that I want to implement or certain goals that I have for the year. So I titled the page New Year Better Me, because I'm not going to be a completely different new version of myself. I'm just going to improve the current version of myself. Then I made a list of a lot of the habits and routines that I want to get into this year and kind of establish in my daily or weekly routine. And I also made a section to list goals, although I feel like I have to do a little bit more self-reflecting before I finish this list, because as you can see, it's pretty short right now. And I'm not really sure what my goals for the new year are aside from those already listed. I feel like it's mostly just habits I want to establish. I will say I feel like the habits I want to establish tie into the second goal I listed, which is be cleaner, more organized, and less cluttered, because I feel like as a person I am these things, but I feel like within the past like year I've gotten worse at these things just because life has been crazy. We've been moving so much like between different apartments and houses before finally getting to settle down here in this apartment in Oregon. So I feel like because of that I've kind of gotten out of the habit of being really clean and organized, and I feel like my space tends to get more cluttered now just because for so long I didn't really have my own space for long periods of time where I could get it really organized and not cluttered. So now that we finally have a space that we plan to be in for a while again, I want to get better at being clean and organized and not cluttered again. Then this is the first time I've ever done a spread like this, and I feel like I've never really seen this before, but I'm basically calling it my ideal week spread. The inspiration behind this was, again, all the different habits and routines that I said I want to implement this year, and a lot of them I simply haven't just because I'm literally just forgetful and I forget that I want to do these things on a regular basis. As I mentioned, I think the chalkboard will definitely help me keep to this like ideal routine and weekly setup. I also am just a very visual person, and I felt like I had all these habits that I want to implement in my head, and I even wrote them in a list, but like it's hard to see how that's going to fit into your actual week. So because I'm such a visual person, I decided to make this spread for the first time. Obviously, this is not like me trying to cement every single week into a format like this and like get mad at myself if I don't do something on this list. It's more so just to show how the routines and habits that I want to develop this year can easily fit into a weekly routine. For example, one that I really want to start doing is picking up the house and decluttering like every night before bed. I feel like if you establish this habit, your house is always organized and decluttered. And if you're doing it every single day, there's only so much mess that can happen in one day. So you're kind of doing a little bit at a time instead of a lot every once in a while. This goes for picking up Suki's toys if they're all over the house, or doing the dishes if there's a few stragglers in the sink, or folding some blankets if we were using them on the couch and now they're just sprawled out, unfolded, and not in the basket that they're supposed to go in. Just little things like that so that the house every morning feels put together and clean, and I'm not waking up to an already cluttered house and then adding more clutter on top of that and then having to like spend a lot longer on the weekend cleaning it up because I've already been doing it throughout the week, you know? And then I want to follow that with either journaling or reading before bed. Lately, I have entered a very bad habit of going on my phone before bed, and it's probably the reason I can't sleep very well right now. Also, I'm so bad at remembering to make the bed, and this kind of goes along with decluttering the house every night before bed so that I wake up to a nice, clean, organized house. Then I wake up to that and I make my bed so the entire apartment feels very nice and clean and organized. I'm so bad at making my bed. I'm so lazy about it. Like, it's not that hard. It doesn't take that long. I don't know why, but I hate doing it. But hopefully this changes that. Anyway, those are just a few highlights in my ideal week spread. And then that moves us into January. So I made this very basic January cover spread. It kind of mimics the cover that I made for the entire journal. And that's as far as I've gotten because, again, I don't plan to do anything crazy. I'm not going full bullet journal with this journal. I'm keeping it a little bit more basic and simple. So I imagine after this page of the January cover page, it'll mostly just be little journal entries now and then, maybe mixed in with some like to-do lists and stuff. But yeah, that is the journal setup. By the way, I've never used this brand before. I'll link it down below if anyone's curious which journal I got. I got on Amazon. I always get my bullet journals on Amazon because I feel like they're cheapest and they have a lot of options. There's this other brand that I always used to get, and I don't remember why I didn't get it this year. I think maybe just because I saw this one in this color and I wanted this color and they didn't have one like that. But anyway, this is a different brand than usual, but so far it seems good. Also, if you noticed, I do use like the grid graph paper notebooks, which is a little bit harder to find. I feel like most of them are dots, which is how I started bullet journaling. But I think in my attempts to not get overly obsessed with the perfection of my journal, I turned to the grid a few years ago because I feel like it's easier to draw straight lines without a ruler that look pretty decent than with the dots. And also I just feel like it gives more structure to my pages and it just like looks neater. That's just me, my personal preference. I feel like most people prefer the dots, but I guess I'm the odd one out. Next order of business is this chalkboard. So here's what I'm envisioning for the chalkboard. I'm picturing like top half, maybe a little bit longer than that, like the top 2/3 maybe, is going to be the calendar spread, and that's going to stay the same every month. I wish that I had thought ahead and ordered like skinny white tape to do the lines of the calendar, but I didn't. So I'm just going to hand draw them, which is probably going to be really annoying and hard to get to look good. And it's also going to be annoying erasing every month and trying not to erase the lines, which is why I'm like, why did you not just get the tape? But maybe I can invest in that in the future. For now, I'm just going to have to hand draw it. The calendar will be used for personal events, but mainly like chores around the house and all the stuff I mentioned earlier that I just forget because I don't have anything reminding me to do it. Then I think in the bottom half or bottom third, however big it ends up being, I'm thinking I'd want a section for just like a running to-do list because there are so many times in my life, again, I feel like I'm just an abnormally forgetful person, and I'll think to myself like, oh my God, I need to do this thing. But like I'm not in a moment or a situation where I can do it. And I'd love to just like have the running to-do list there for literally anything, personal, professional, whatever, like just a random master to-do list. AJ can add to it too. And it's just like I think of something I need to do, but I can't do it right that second for whatever reason, and I go right on the chalkboard real quick. We'll see how this ends up working out, if it ends up working out as well as it does in my mind, because sometimes I might not even have access to the chalkboard to write it down, so that would be problematic. But anyway, I just want like a running to-do list all the time so that I hate when I like have thought of something I need to do 15 times in the past 2 weeks, but still have not done it because every time I think of it, I can't do it at that moment, and then I don't write it down, and then I forget again. So those are the two main things I want. And then I also considered maybe making an area of like habit reminders or something on the chalkboard too, but I don't know if I'll actually do that. We'll see. I got these chalkboard pencils honestly years ago because I wanted to like really start using the chalkboard, and then I just never did. So we're gonna open these for the first time today and use these to write on the chalkboard. It comes with a bunch of different colors. I'll probably mainly just use the white because I feel like that's what'll show up best. But I think the colors could be helpful when I'm coordinating like chores on the calendar versus like personal events happening in our lives and stuff like that. Oh, also, I think I'm going to try and multitask, and while I work on the chalkboard, I'm going to also be offloading footage onto my hard drive and trying to like clear up some space on my laptop. So each of these tasks might take a little bit longer because of that, but I feel like because there's so much downtime waiting for stuff to offload, it doesn't make sense to not do them at the same time. So I'm going to do both. Okay, I finished the chalkboard and it turned out so cute. I was a little bit concerned because it's so big and I was freehanding everything, and the longest straight edge I have is a ruler, 12 inches, which is not long enough for the entire length of the board. So I was a little bit concerned that the lines would not be straight or look good, but turned out good. I stuck pretty much to exactly the plan I said I was going to. Not much changed as I was doing it. I did the calendar at the top, which mostly is going to serve as a reminder of when we need to do our weekly and bi-weekly chores, but it'll also have some other stuff going on in our lives when there is stuff going on. Then under that, I actually listed all the weekly and bi-weekly chores because it's easier than writing them all on the calendar, and it kind of gives us a straightforward list of all the chores we need to do weekly and bi-weekly. I'm hoping I didn't forget anything because I kind of structured the entire design of the chalkboard around those lists, not shortening or lengthening. So hopefully I don't think of something I need to add and then I have to figure out where to put it on the chalkboard. But for now, I feel like I got the bases covered. I also threw in at the very bottom a little box for daily chores. I feel like this is kind of the same concept as the habits that I've been saying I want to implement that I was writing about in my journal, just because I'm not going to write on every single day of the calendar, like pick up the house and journal before bed and the daily stuff I want to do, because that would just be ridiculous. So I figured just having a little box at the bottom to remind me of the things I want to do every day should be good enough. And then on the other side of the bottom half of the chalkboard is the to-do list. Like I said, I want this to just kind of be like a master to-do list that anyone in the house can add to when we think of things we need to get done. Like I said, I am sick of having things that I remember I need to do and then forgetting to do them, and then remembering again, then forgetting again. So this is just a place where we can gather everything that we need to do, no matter how urgent or how far out, so that we don't forget to actually do it. And those were the two biggest things I wanted to check off today. So I'm really glad I got around to it. It took like all afternoon. It's almost 5 o'clock now, which is usually when I stop working and stuff, because that's when AJ stops working. But in these last few minutes, I want to try to like revamp my computer a little bit, maybe make a new desktop background. I've had the same desktop background for a little while, and I feel like now would be a good time for a fresh start and a new, more inspiring background. Also, I want to customize the folders on my desktop again because they used to be customized, and then I don't know, I like got an update or something, and then all of a sudden the customizations went away and they're just back to like the generic blue folders. That's like a really minor, small detail, but I want to do that too. I think I'm going to work on that now until dinner.